And even if it was, you are one. VIPs, hi. You all right? Good, good.
Throw it under here.
I do whatever goes to the I'm the same way. Actually, I do What did the chief say?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'll try that one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, truly thank you to all who are joining with us today, certainly the brave women and men of IMPD, but also our community activists in partnership with IMPD. So today's stewardship report is important for all of us. Last year, 2019, brought some measure of welcome news when it comes to gun violence in Indianapolis. For the first time in a decade, after a return to community-based beat policing and after deploying the community violence intervention strategy, we experienced the number of year-over-year homicides in decline. Now, this joins several years of a decline in the rates of other violent crimes in Indianapolis. But the truth is also, this does not speak to every home. It doesn't speak to every headline. And we must be muted in our optimism. It's important to be optimistic, but the optimism needs to be muted, because while any community, neighborhood, or individual, if they are living among the threat of violence in our city, bringing violent individuals to justice will always be a necessity. And so, over the next 3 years, our city will further reduce gun violence by continuing to focus on violent individuals while working with community members to address conditions that contribute to gun violence. For decades now, American cities have deployed one strategy more than any other, which studies have shown successfully reduces the rates of gun violence. It isn't the corrosive stop and frisk or tough on crime laws of the 1980s and the 1990s. Nor is it necessarily more restrictive gun laws. Time and again, in city after city, the strategy that has most consistently reduced gun violence is focused deterrence. A strategy of focusing on individuals who are disproportionately responsible for or at risk of committing violence. A strategy that is central to our community violence reduction efforts, and one that is further focusing the efforts of our law enforcement officers in IMPD. It is a strategy that fails to play into the emotional appeals of left or right. Instead, the cold, hard evidence, which belongs to no political party, it belongs to no ideology, speaks for itself. This is what has worked. It worked in our city in the late 1990s, when we last saw a dramatic decrease in gun violence between 1998 and 2001. And it has worked in cities throughout America. To be clear, there are no sure things or guarantees, but this is indeed one of the strongest proven methods: focused deterrence. It is a chance not only to further reduce crime rates in our city, but to further build the trust between our police and our neighborhoods, our community. Real and permanent solutions to gun violence must draw from all sectors of Indianapolis: law enforcement, state, county, and local agencies, community organizations, businesses, neighbors, everyone. Law enforcement cannot do it alone. Because violence doesn't just affect the immediate victim. It affects all loved ones. It affects the neighborhoods. It affects the community. And yes, it affects our whole city. It's been said before, but it bears repeating. We're all in this together. Chronic violence threatens to divide communities from the larger city. Only unity will heal division. So that is what we must be, unified. We all have the same goal. We all live in the same city. I implore all community members who want to continue reducing violence in our city to play a part. It will be that collaboration which will provide the information that keeps communities safer, that boosts our resources, and that ensures we hold each other accountable in supportive and transparent ways. I'm proud of each and every one of you. I'm proud that you are here today. And I'm proud of our city when it stands together, unified. I'll close with this. The history of our city is that when we come together in Indianapolis as one city, there is nothing that we cannot overcome. You've seen it in so many different contexts. When public and private sectors, when community and neighborhoods come together, Indianapolis is capable of surmounting any challenge. And that is what we embark on today. So with more on this ambitious vision, I am very proud to introduce our new IMPD Chief, Randall Taylor. Let me just say this. IMPD is the finest police department in all of the country. And Chief Taylor will be the first to acknowledge he's got big shoes to fill. Brian Roach was an outstanding chief, but I know Randy Taylor is up to it. He'll be the kind of chief that Brian Roach was in his own way. And we look forward to joining with him as he leads us to a safer community.
Thank you, sir. Well, thank you and good afternoon. Thank you, of course, Mayor Hogsett, for all your support of the IMPD, the men and women that serve our community every day. Also want to make sure I thank Dr. Amy Swan and also Natalie Woods and the rest of the staff here at Matchbook Learning. So today we gather for a number of reasons, but one, to look at 2019, but then also to look forward to 2020 and the work that we're going to do together to make our city a safer place. As the mayor mentioned, bringing justice to those who tear individuals' lives and families apart with violent crime is always going to be a necessity. But a preferred approach is to prevent and intervene in this cycle of violence before it shatters lives. This is an ambitious vision for sure, but one that deserves to be pursued. Because everyone in Indianapolis deserves to live a life free of gun violence. The evidence shows us that we must first focus on the highest risk people and places, deploying strategies that balance the threat of consequences with opportunity. allowing those at highest risk of involvement in gun violence the chance to take a different path without incarceration. And in the words of criminal justice researcher Thomas Apt, the violence in our city needs to be viewed as a problem to be solved, not as an argument to be won. And the solutions demand that our criminal justice agencies function as a unified system to address that violence. These themes are what you'll notice throughout today's presentation as we discuss the results and ongoing efforts to solve these issues and to build upon them. So allow me to introduce, for more details, my Assistant Chief of Police, Chris Bailey.
Thanks, Chief. Mayor, thank you. I drew the short straw today. I only have 128 slides, so I hope you guys packed a lunch. Just kidding, just kidding. We'll start off with some statistics that recap our 2019 and in a way to be transparent both when things are going well and when things aren't going well. As you can see, in the mayor alluded to, we had a slight drop in our criminal homicides from 158 to 153 in 2019. The first time, like the mayor said, in 10 years that we had not seen an increase or a record number of criminal homicides in our city. It's an important milestone, but one not to be celebrated. We know that there's a lot of work still left to do, and at least 153 families in our community are suffering and will continue to suffer due to the violence that they had to deal with. As well, going on the lines of the criminal homicide is the clearance rate. How many people are we putting in jail for those criminal homicides? Because that's what makes our efforts legitimate. That's what deters future criminals from committing those type of acts, and that's what the families and victims deserve is justice. The national average for criminal homicide clearance is approximately 60%. In 2017, we saw a sharp decline in that percentage, and only clearing 41% of our cases. In 2018, it jumped significantly to almost 66%, and then we saw a slight decline last year. There are a lot of factors associated with clearing a homicide. It's not as simple as law enforcement putting the handcuffs on somebody and that's it. We have to make sure that we have a solid case, that case we present to the prosecutor's office is good enough to convict a jury or a judge to make that conviction. And while we focus on clearance rates a lot, it's important. What's most important is the conviction. Did we give that family justice they deserved? And each individual homicide case has its own individual evidence and characteristics. And so we'll continue to try to build upon this success and make that an even higher number, but that's going to depend on several things that we'll talk about here shortly. The next few slides are going to show you what are our preliminary, what are the cleanest data that we have in 2019, which only goes through the end of May. When I say clean data, this data means that it's been verified. People, civilians in our agency, read every single police report. They go through and make sure that the officers labeled the report the correct way, and this is the information we report to the FBI. This information only goes through May, because you can see in homicides, at this point at the end of May, we were down almost 18% in criminal homicides. Every other category, minus rape, you're going to see had a slight decrease, which has been on par with our overall crime numbers the last few years, which have been down double digits. The one thing we haven't gotten our hands wrapped around yet is the criminal homicides and the non-fatal shooting numbers. Now, we have a lot of neighbors in here, and I was a district commander on North District, and I know my commanders in here will attest this. When we go to your community meetings, the one thing we hear about more than anything is the property crime, the burglaries, the larceny from vehicles, the vehicle thefts. The property crime in our city has been on a steady decline for a long time. The trends through May have continued that way. I do want to point out one thing real quick, and the chief is going to bring something up a little bit later. That's the robbery numbers here. We've seen hundreds of incidents less over the last few years. However, toward the end of 2019, that number started to shoot back up again. Now, we're not close to where we were. We're still way down. But we think that by the end of 2019, when the numbers are complete, that our robberies are actually going to be higher in 19 than they were in 18, just based on anecdotal information that we have so far. And we're working with our covert robbery unit and some of the businesses to try to rectify that situation. And then here's just the overall crime. Violent crime consists of murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and then all the other crimes are in the other category. I do want to take a brief minute, and this is where I don't want anybody to fall asleep on me, but we're transitioning, as we're required by the federal government and the FBI, to transition from the Uniform Crime Report, which is UCR, to a program called NIBRS, the National Incident-Based Reporting System. What is the big difference in the two of these systems? Under the UCR system, if we were to have one incident where we had a murder, rape, and a robbery, the only thing that's counted is the murder, because it goes by the hierarchy rule, which is the most highest offense. A few years ago, the FBI decided that they wanted to give communities a better understanding of the crime in their communities. And so under the NIBRS system, every single one of those crimes will count. Every single victim that's a victim of that will be counted. So the picture of crime will be better. What's important to know is that you cannot ever compare NIBRS data to UCR data. They're completely different, they're calculated differently, and they can't be treated as the same. And so we'll be talking more of that as we transition. We're required to transition this year, is that right, Chief Cunningham? Okay. And that's a requirement for every agency that reports to the FBI. And if you don't report to it, then there's penalties, especially associated with your grants and things like that. But there's more discussion to have about that as we move toward that transition. Here's the one that's really disturbing to us is the non-fatal shooting numbers. And you'll notice a lot of cities across the country don't even separate their non-fatal shootings from their aggravated assaults. They lump them all in together. We've been doing this for about 10 years with the help of Natalie Hipple, who is an independent researcher from Indiana University. She gets with our aggravated assault lieutenant, and they go through every single case to make sure that our numbers are accurate, so that when we report them out, to be transparent, whether they're up or down, we're giving you accurate information. We had 452 incidents compared to 447 the year before. And the disturbing thing for us is that we've had more victims shot at each one of those incidents. But that's what we're focusing on with some of the projects that we're going to talk about going forward, things that we've been doing that we're just building upon, and some new strategies going into 2020. So one of the big things is making sure that we're leveraging technology to our benefit. One of the best things that we implemented last year was a Crime Gun Intelligence Center. This is a collaboration between all the agencies that you see up on that screen, and what they use is forensic and ballistic evidence to connect gun crimes together. So evidence collected at one scene can be connected through forensics and ballistics happening on another scene. Once those connections are made, the detectives and analysts then start looking for who the suspects are, who has fired that gun at least twice. We've had guns in our possession that we've taken off the street in 2019 and disrupted the shooting cycle that were connected in as many as 24 different shootings around our city. One gun used in 24 different incidents. We would not have known that without this new investment in technology and cooperation with our federal partners at the ATF and the United States Attorney's Office. Just how important is this? This is the staffing levels that we have committed to this group. They all work out of the same building, and they all work together every single day with one mission: remove serial shooters from our street and disrupt the shooting cycle before that gun is used in another violent crime in our city. And it's an excellent team, and they do great work every single day. The number on the right side of your screen there is going to represent the number of guns recovered by the IMPD over the last 3 years. As you can see, that number has gone from 3,500 to 3,600 since 2017. And then when I talked about earlier the ballistic evidence that's recovered from these things, this is the guns that have been tested by our forensic lab over those years. As you can see, we've gone from 3,600 to 3,900. What that in turn gives us is these leads. These leads tell us that the gun has been used in multiple crimes. And that's what we focus our attention on, is those folks that are out there shooting repeatedly. That's what those numbers mean. It's impressive work. There's no one in the country that is doing their crime gun intelligence center like we are here in the city of Indianapolis. It's something to be proud of. This is just their results from this year, and what's important to know is that, you know, we talk a lot about arrests, and those are important, but these arrests represent violent individuals in our city, not misdemeanor, not necessarily random arrests through traffic stops. Every one of the folks that were arrested here were targeted for one reason and one reason alone. They are our trigger puller. They committed at least 2 acts of gun violence in our city, and our officers spend every day looking for them to disrupt the shooting cycle. They took 254 crime guns off the street. Going into 2020, we're going to continue this effort of regional response to gun crime. Our newest partner is the Fishers Police Department. They've been trained in our gun liaison program. They understand this NIBIN system. They have given us a detective and put them into our task force, our CJIC task force, because they found that 89 guns that they confiscated in the city of Fishers, 50 of them, at least 50 of them were connected to gun crimes in Indianapolis. Had it not been for that collaboration and partnership, we would have not have known that. They had a canine killed, if you remember that from the news. The individuals that killed that canine were responsible for 2 murders in Indianapolis and is shooting at least, is it Craig, 5 other people at least, if not more. 9 total other people. Had it not been for the cooperation we had established and the quick turnaround of the forensic and ballistic evidence in that gun, we would not have been able to pursue charges here in Marion County against these individuals who went on a spree. We talked a little bit about clearance rate and how important that is to our community. One of the big projects that we were funded through a couple years ago through the mayor and the city county council was a victim assistance fund. And I'm happy to say that I think in 2018 we may have not even broken spending $50,000 of the money allocated, and last year we spent $165,000 to help 15 families who were victims of crime or witnesses in crime to help us prosecute them. People need to know this program is out there. It's not a witness relocation program. We can't change your identity, but we certainly can help you in ways that help you cooperate with us and to keep you safe from retaliation. The mayor mentioned this is our return to beat policing, and the reason we're able to do this is because of staffing, which we'll talk about here shortly. But the map on this side of the screen, my right, represents the current beat configuration in our 6 service districts, and the map on my left represents the new configuration, which we'll go to later in the year, which is 106 policing beats. We've made these geographical areas smaller for a couple reasons: to make sure that our officers are able to connect with the community, and that they know the community, and that we have more officers on the street patrolling to keep us all safe. Here's our staffing levels. I'm proud to say that we currently have the most sworn IMPD staff in the history of law enforcement in this county, and that's all thanks to you, the taxpayers, our mayor's forward vision, and the city county council for providing the funds to get there. Now, we wanted to get to 1,743 by the end of last year. We didn't quite meet that mark, but we were very close, and the money is there in the 2020 budget to make sure we hit those levels. And we have 2 classes of recruits scheduled for this year, as well as a possibility of hiring a lateral police class, which is taking veteran officers from other police agencies and then adding them to our ranks. In order to do this, we have to have a strong recruiting unit and a strong recruiting effort. I couldn't be more proud of the efforts of Deputy Chief Cunningham and her staff and newly appointed Major Ida Williams. Because of their efforts and forward thinking and vision and leadership, IMPD reached a historic 31% diversity numbers in women and those that speak multi-languages in this current recruit class. We were able to raise the starting salary from $37,000 to $57,000. We have a program called Pre-Academy Readiness that meets every Tuesday that prepares future recruits, teaches them how to be physically fit, informs them of the process that they're going to be involved in as they move into the recruit. And into the academy, and out of that PAR program, that Tuesday night program, there are 17 recruits in this current reclass that participated in that Tuesday night event. That's incredible, and that's great work from our from our staff out of the academy and the administration division. But it all really starts in the community. Nothing that we do as law enforcement has any legitimacy if we don't have that connection with the community that we serve.